When a white North Charleston police officer shot a fleeing black man 4 times in the back, Jerry Bogus was watching a rerun.
It repeated itself, showing almost the same situation as ours was.
His son-in-law, Michael Newby, 10 years ago, shot 3 times in the back, fleeing a Louisville police officer who was fired but then acquitted of murder.
Do you think there is a racial bias in Louisville in the use of force?
It's always been. It's always been.
Is there a racial bias? I obtained and examined every Louisville Metro Police use of force report, 600 of them in 2013. As many as 7 times in a day, Louisville police used force in an arrest, from takedowns to punches, kicks, batons, pepper spray, tasers, canines, or guns. Keeping in mind the population of Louisville is 21% black, 73% white, 46% of the 600 use of force incidents involved black suspects, 54% white. Of the 181 times a taser was used, 41% involved black suspects, 56% white. And when police officers punched suspects, 60% were black, 36% were white.
Some could perceive that as it might be just a little bit too, too much to kind of stomach in the sense of the numbers.
Right now, in the climate we're in, I'm almost inclined to say better people get hit or tased than killed.
Dr. Ricky Jones is chair of U of L's Pan-African Studies Department.
I am going to say that we have far too many encounters with black men especially and police, and we need to figure out why.
So why is this happening? Is there a racism problem in the Louisville Metro Police Department? Or is there a disproportional problem in the African American community when it comes to crime? Breaking down suspect and arrest data last year by race, 72% of the robbery suspects last year were black, 72% of the rape arrests were black, 67% of the homicide arrests were black.
Our efforts are not so much at targeting a particular population or a particular race. They're about targeting people that are involved in criminal activity.
The police chief says the higher percentage of use of force on African Americans is not out of line when you consider who's committing crimes and the neighborhoods they're targeting where most crime is occurring.
It stands to reason if we have more officers working in those neighborhoods, we're going to have more opportunities to contact people of color.
I found in dozens of the 600 use of force incidents, officers were able to safely disarm suspects with loaded guns in situations that could have resulted in justified shootings. Officers are constantly bitten and spit on. In many cases, police say the suspects purposely injured themselves. I also noticed oftentimes police initiate the force, after noting things like faced officer in a threatening manner, clenched fists, aggressive posture, felt tension. LMPD use of force policy says officers are not required to allow any suspect to be the first to exercise force and gain an advantage.
We aren't coming onto a scene to be a punching bag for someone.
I noticed several cases where officers tased a fleeing suspect in the back. The chief says they revised that policy since.
We've really tried to tighten our policy up on that. So often you have situations where someone will flee and you don't know why they've fled. That's not a situation where you need to run after them and tase them.
And what about the case last month where an LMPD officer shot an unarmed man running from police after ditching a stolen car? Chief Conrad says it's still under investigation.
You would be authorized to use deadly force in a situation where you were trying to apprehend someone who has just committed a crime that involves deadly force or serious physical injuries, and you would have to be able to articulate that you believed if you did not take them into custody immediately, that they may continue to try to endanger someone.
Which brings us back to the central question, whether it's last month or 10 years ago.
What do you say to people who say, if these people would just do what the police say, if Michael would have just stopped and said, put his hands up, what do you say to those people?
He had a fear of police for a long time.
If 600 use of force incidents sounds like a lot in a city this size, Chief Conrad says police had 572,000 contacts with citizens that year, which means force was used 0.1% of the time. John Bull, Wave 3 News.